Welcome back to the program. Thanks for your company. We're live from Rooty Hill RSL in Sydney's west this afternoon, where in just over 2 hours, Kevin Rudd and Tony Abbott will be head-to-head for one final time in this election campaign. Ahead of tonight's People's Forum, the coalition have moved to, well, address some of the pressure they've been facing from Labor to produce their costings. They announced, Joe Hockey, Andrew Robb and Matthias Cormann, $31.6 billion worth of savings measures. Matthias Cormann, the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, joins me now to go through some of them. Thanks for your time. Now,
good to be here.
Your colleague Joe Hockey spent a lot of time talking about the integrity of the process you've gone through here. Parliamentary Budget Office that's been set up now has done the costings on a lot of your policies, and then you've got a panel of eminent Australians overseeing that as well. But why haven't you today actually released any costings so that we can actually see what the Parliamentary Budget Office has done?
Well, David, we're continuing to go through an orderly, methodical, structured process. I mean, as you know, we've been releasing a policy, and each one of our policy documents has got the cost of that policy attached to it. Before today, we had already announced about $17 billion worth of savings. We've added further to that today, to the point where we've now announced $31.6 billion worth of savings without any cuts to health, without any cuts to education, without any cuts to defence, contrary to the Prime Minister's dishonest assertions. So really, I mean, what we're doing is we're just sticking to our timetable. We're following a proper process. And of course, next week, after we've released all of our policies, we will be releasing a full list of all of our policies and their cost, a full list of all of our savings measures and their value. And what people will see is that the budget bottom line will be better off under the coalition.
And will that include the assumptions and methodology that's gone into putting these costings together? Because under the Charter of Budget Honesty, it says, and I quote, "A political party requesting a costing publicly detail the assumptions and methodology used." So will you next week produce all of that?
Well, we will be releasing all of the appropriate detail next week, and let me just point out that, of course, this government has amended the legislation in relation to the Charter of Budget Honesty. It is this government that has established the Parliamentary Budget Office. We've taken advantage of the Parliamentary Budget Office, and in fact, we've gone one step further. As you've said, I mean, we have appointed a committee with three highly regarded, eminent Australians: Peter Shergold, Jeff Carmody, and Len Scanlon, senior public officials, senior experts around Australia in public administration and finance, and they are putting their reputation on the line, signing off
which is great,
on the credibility of our process and the integrity of our costings.
Which is great, but it still looks like you're leaving it until the very last minute to show us the detail, the assumptions and methodology and the costings.
Well, David, we've done way more than any opposition before us. We've done way more than the government has, either on this occasion or in previous elections. So, I mean, really, I mean, if people measure us by the same yardstick that they've measured the Labor Party over this election and the last two elections, then we have done an outstanding job in terms of being open and transparent with the Australian people about the cost of our policies and how we're proposing to fund them.
When you go to the Treasury and Finance website, and the website's electioncostings.gov.au, you can see a stack of Labor policies there and see all the detail on how Treasury has costed them. There's a stack of Greens policies there as well. Same thing. You click on coalition policies and it says they're yet to come. So you do acknowledge you're not quite there yet.
Look, I mean, David, I haven't seen anywhere on that Treasury website a reference to the cost of the company tax cut that Kevin Rudd promised in Darwin the other week. And I know that Penny Wong, his finance minister, the Minister for Budget Blowouts, has been running away from it.
That is like your pledge to get rid of the means test on private health insurance rebate. That's way off beyond the forward estimates.
Well, I mean, we've of course, again, we've gone through a structured process. We've put forward our short-term deliverables, our short-term action plans, our plans on what we can realistically deliver on day one, should we be successful in the first 100 days of a first term of a coalition government, should we be successful. And we've given an indication of the positive vision that we have for Australia beyond that. But, like, I mean, Kevin Rudd hasn't announced any specific policies, really, in relation to what the government would do over the next term. I mean, the other day he was announcing Well, he was trying to create the impression that Labor would build a rapid rail line from Brisbane down to Melbourne, Sydney and Melbourne. And of course, all he promised really was that over the next term of government, he would draw a line on the map. I mean, he didn't promise anything tangible really at all.
Let me ask you about your policies, because you've also confirmed today you will back the government's increase in the tobacco excise and the bank levy that you were heavily critical of. Why have you decided to back them now?
Well, I mean, we don't like many of the things that the government has done in recent years, but of course we won't be able to fix up every one of Labor's bad decisions on day one. We will have to prioritise, and of course what we've been very open and transparent with the Australian people about where that prioritisation is taking us. The first thing we'll do is we'll scrap Labor's carbon tax, because that is pushing up the cost of living, it is pushing up the cost of doing business, and it is making us less competitive internationally. It's bad for our economy.
Okay,
we will scrap the mining tax.
If this is about priorities, and if this is all about priorities, then where does the $16 million for Cadbury's fit in? If you can't afford to do a lot of things and have to back tax increases that you don't like, and yet you're throwing $16 million at a private business, how does that add up?
Well, I mean, Tasmania is sadly, is in particularly a bad shape after way too many years of Labor Green mismanagement in that state, and after 6 years of bad Labor government out of Canberra. I mean, if you look at all of the economic indicators in Tasmania, Tasmania is lagging behind. And of course, that particular facility that we have announced an investment into today, I mean, it's a tourist attraction. It is something that has sort of essentially is in desperate need for some support, and we think it is a sensible investment, it's a sensible contribution that we can make to help out a state that is doing particularly badly.
Where do you draw the line here? I mean, Cadbury's owned by the global food giant Kraft. Why not throw government money at the Cascade Brewery in Tasmania, or a cat food factory or something like that?
Well, you'd obviously want to be very selective, and there are some particular circumstances in relation to that facility in Tasmania that make it a tourism icon, which means that in our judgment it deserved the level of support that we announced today.
And just finally, on small business, some of this has been announced before, but you confirm in the savings today that you are going to get rid of the instant asset write-off for small business. That's $2.9 billion, nearly $3 billion out of the pocket of small business.
Well, small business will be better off under the coalition, because we will scrap the carbon tax, which of course pushes up the cost of doing business for small business, for which small business didn't get any compensation under Labor. And of course we'll be cutting red tape costs for business by $1 billion, which small business will be a significant beneficiary for. We will be growing the economy more strongly, which will be good for small business. And of course, I mean, things like scrapping the mining tax is good for small business too, because a lot of small businesses provide goods and services to the mining industry, and it's been particularly bad for them, the uncertainty and the bad impact that the mining tax has had on our mining industry. So, I mean, all up, small business is going to be much better off under the coalition than under Labor. But of course we have been transparent for a very long time that we can't afford to borrow money to fund the sorts of promises that Labor has made that were unfunded because they were attached to Labor's failed mining tax.
Shadow Assistant Treasurer Matthias Cormann, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Always good to be here.